Good morning. Welcome to a brand new week. I hope you've had a pleasant week. Barika de Salah to you, my Muslim brothers and sisters. May God preserve us to see many more. I have picked for myself this morning the topic Nigerians and the delusions of citizenship. You will not be surprised that I am looking to speak to the subject of citizenship. It is something that I have come to multiple times because I have come to the firm belief, that the absence of citizenship is probably one of the most devastating consequence of the Nigerian condition of impunity, because the two really cannot coexist. You cannot have the reign of impunity and have the sanctity of citizenship. So the two have been issues that I have mulled for some time. Uh, so today I would like us to examine this subject. And I think it will be much easier. It's not so much about definitions as much as about understanding. I think it is very important that we at least come to a common understanding of these terminologies, these precepts. What do they really mean? Because when you say somebody is a citizen, we use the word, it should have universal application, but within the context of usage, the important thing that must be understood is exactly what it is that we mean when we say somebody is a citizen. The concept of citizenship is something that evolved over time. It is intricately linked with the doctrine of the state itself. And what it says is that men live in our original state, in the state of nature, without the emergence of nation states, and each man had his absolute rights. And we used our rights to protect ourselves and our properties. And one famous philosopher did say that it was the state of nature. It was nasty, it was brutish, and it was short. It described a chaotic existence. But that is the European reality. And it might even be the case in relation, perhaps, to the Asians to an extent. But this wasn't the reality of the African. We did not live in a state of nature. We had evolved societies with highly stylized systems of governance. I am a Yoruba man, and in my civilization, the rights of citizenship were already deeply enshrined, and you will find ample proof of these in our practices, in our proverbs, in our customs. Yorubas will say, "Ibita beru labi omo." As the slave was conceived, so was the freeborn conceived. This was to make clear that, yeah, there could be slaves, but other than the slave, what you had was a freeborn. And slavery was a function of warfare, because the debtor was any warfare. whose right may be redeemed upon payment of his debt. So this concept of chaos from which European citizenship emerged and which has formed the basis for the citizenship definition of the average Nigerian is not necessarily true of the African. We had citizenship long before the white man and the Arab found their unfortunate ways to our shores. So reality is, we were always citizens. It took colonization to derogate from our citizenship. And with the derogation of our citizenship as a function of colonization, what then happened is that upon the formation of the Nigerian state, the basis of citizenship stopped being the person, because it was never the person. It became membership of one ethnic nation or the other, because the British entered into treaties with Obers. Obers wouldn't even have powers over the subjects to subjugate them to the English crown, but that's another story for another day. The point I'm seeking to make is to let it be clear to each and every one of us that the Nigerian doctrine of citizenship, or at least the African doctrine of citizenship, did not proceed from the state of chaos described in Western thinking. Ours was a society, or were societies, in which the doctrine of citizenship had been evolved. We didn't need the British to tell us who a citizen is. You may begin to deal with areas where there was slavery, or where you had caste systems, such as northern Nigeria, the vast part of what is today known as northern Nigeria. So you can begin to speak to citizenship as an alien concept brought by the British to a subjugated community. That was not the case in vast parts of southern Nigeria. There were citizens in place, freeborns. It was always, or mostly, a function of how you succeeded in your own right as a member of that society. People were not locked into caste systems. So we had the rudiment of a citizens-based society in vast parts of southern Nigeria. So here is the thing. The doctrine of citizenship as it exists in Nigeria is one that is founded on the assumption that your membership of one ethnic nationality or the other, and to a lesser but not nonetheless important extent, your membership of a religious order, determines the content of your citizenship. That is what we have evolved. We do not have a template that is blind to ethnicity or religiosity in determining the rights of the citizen. To be a citizen, all these should not matter. But I get ahead of myself. There is a relationship between the rule of law and the sanctity of citizenship. When you speak about the rule of law, what you're saying essentially is that in this space, your office does not matter. Your father's name or yours matters not. What counts is the law. The supremacy of the law. That is what counts. When you're speaking about the rule of law, You're saying, in essence, that all that matters, all that counts, is that at all points in time, the law is supreme in the land. The state is beholden to the law. The citizens are beholden to the law. And the law rules without fear or favor. That is what it means. Now, if that is the case, it then means that citizens exist, the inhabitants, both citizens and aliens, within the space, equally bound by the laws which are clearly written and known to all or ought to be known to all. Bounds all. It then means that each and every one of the persons in that place are subject to the rule of law and are equal before the law. You can have citizenship in that kind of space. But in a space where citizenship is dependent, only dependent on the discretion of the person whose duty it is to uphold the law or to interpret it, where the law is what a man says it is and not what the law says it is, at that point, you really cannot speak to citizenship. The person may be a subject. The person might be a serf, or even worse, a slave. But the person is not a citizen. It is my contention that the Nigerian, in the complete and total absence of the rule of law in the Nigerian state, a fact I do not believe requires any further argument for or against, but a notorious fact. It is impossible to speak about the Nigerian as a citizen for too many reasons. But just so that one might not be deemed to be unnecessarily dismissive of contrary opinions, please explain to me in what universe you may call the persons murdered by Burata's convoy, 430 of them, I believe, according to the Kaduna State Commission of Inquiry, where, in what universe is it okay for the convoy of the army chief to kill 430 persons that you believe to be citizens? Citizens. Those are persons that a state is beholden to protect. Those are persons that the soldiers would have been under a duty, sworn duty to protect, but they were killed by soldiers who were guarding one man occupying the office of the chief of army staff. One man. But it was okay. The murders could be justified because these were Shia Muslims. They were not Sunni Muslims. You see, they were Shia Muslims. So it was okay to kill them. And they were killed. The Kaduna State Commission of Inquiry gave the figures. Those are in my own figures. And we haven't come around to talking about the massacre at Lekki Toll Gate. In what country would citizens be killed in broad daylight, because it was just 6:37 or thereabout when the shooting started at Lekki? LCC, a company wholly owned by Lagos State government, switched off his camera, removed his camera, switched off the lights. And you say those were citizens. Do you even know the meaning of the word? Citizens. Those are law-protected persons for whose life the state have an obligation to give account. They were murdered gruesomely, and instrumentalities of the state went into full gear to deny their murder. And you call them citizens. And you call yourself citizens. Some of you became the ones justifying and excusing their massacre. You justified it. Months later, almost 2 years or thereabout later, someone came out and they buried these persons at profit again. No conscience. And you call them citizens, right? Citizens. They thought themselves citizens. You call them citizens. You believe yourself to be a citizen too, right? Yeah, indeed. The Nigerian and his delusion of citizenship is scary. It is in this same country. A policeman, or as we say, the Yoruba is very graphic. Olopa, the bearer of the king's staff of office, his symbol of office, his authority. That's the Olopa, the police. Olopa turns to you with full impunity and he says, I will shoot you. Or sometime, I will kill you and nothing will happen. He's merely told you the truth. Much as you might not like what he's just said, what's the point in hating the player? He just told you the truth. He could kill you and nothing will happen. And many people have been killed and nothing happened. So, big deal. He hasn't lied. He just told the truth. And you're a citizen. And the chief law enforcement agent in the country, the policeman, your first introduction to the powers of the state, has announced to you the reign of impunity that he administers. He will kill you and none will happen. Wallahi. And he just told you the truth. That is the country in which we are forming citizens. I am sorry to be the bearer of bad news. You are not a citizen. What has happened is that Nigeria has become an increasingly feudal state. And don't worry, don't allow yourself to get bogged down with terminologies. What is feudalism? It's simple. It's the pyramidical rule of an absolute ruler supported by legions of underlings and princelings. How does the Nigerian one work? The president declares the law. You better believe it. The president declares what the law is and the court flows from there. So the body odor of the president and the body language of the president becomes the important denominator in determining the power relationship between the state and the people. End of story. That is all that happens. And if you believe You know what? There is a suit before the Supreme Court, the local government one. I'm laughing my head silly these days because I'm thinking to myself how the Nigerian state never seems to end with its many paradoxes and ironies, you know? The same Bola Ahmed Tinubu who dragged Obasanjo to court and built his entire rep as the father of federalism, challenging the Obasanjo behemoth, who created LCDAs in Lagos State, is the same one who has gone now to the Supreme Court to ask that the Supreme Court should declare the local government autonomous of the state. So all of a sudden, local governments in Nigeria are federating units in the country. Can you beat that? And you don't think that that has anything to do with the power relationship in the state? Let me break it down for you. If those ones in the Supreme Court should find the idiocy to concede, as they usually do, what you then find is that INEC is the one conducting elections, the same thing that Tinubu has been doing with the electoral body in Lagos State, is what INEC will now start doing. Same thing they did on February 25th and all of that time. That is exactly what they will now start doing everywhere. Do you get me? That's exactly what will now start happening. So you're centralizing election in a corrupt electoral system. You're sidelining the powers of the federating units, which are meant to be the state, but which are in truth not these states, because this state, in reality, had nothing whatsoever to do with Nigeria. There were only four when Nigeria began its journey to restructuring under various military powers. You get me? So you are dealing with a situation where the rule of men have overtaken the rule of law. And the Nigerian is left with the delusions of his citizenship. The reality of derogation of citizenship and the fact that apartheid is far better should begin to dawn on the Nigerian. See, here is the thing. In the days of apartheid, the black South African, even with the derogation of his rights, was still protected by the law. He couldn't be killed without question if he was going about his lawful duties by the apartheid police. But the Nigerian, regardless of what he might be going about, could be easily killed because he's not subject to any law. He is the subject of impunity. This is the reality of the Nigerian. He calls himself a citizen. There is no white man in sight, but he lives in a reality that is worse than that of the black South African during the apartheid years. That is the reality of the Nigerian. If the Nigerian is going to ever be free, one of the first things that he would have to do is to stop the delusions. The Nigerian is not a citizen. You cannot have citizenship in a space devoid of the rule of law. Nigeria does not practice a democracy. You cannot have a democracy in the absence of the rule of law and the complete absence of citizenship. Citizens choose who rule over them. You already know you don't choose who rule over you. INEC does in conjunction with the judiciary. Those are the ones who do. To be citizens, for the Nigerian to become citizen, we would have to fight and win the right to be citizens. That is the first battle that is before you. Stop deluding yourself into believing in the illusion of a citizenship that is not given to you. You would have to win it. You would have to take it if you would dare. You are not citizens. Get rid of the delusion of citizenship that have stopped you from doing what you must to win your freedom. Enjoy the rest of your week, and God bless you. Amen.